This submission is from hedlesschkn, who is asking not for tuning advice because you're on defaults. So yeah, that makes sense. Give it a shot tuning it yourself before you hand it to me. But asking about a strange thing where when you do flips or rolls, you get uncommanded motion. So you do a roll and you get motion on the pitch axis, or you do a flip and you get motion on the roll axis. So let's take a look. I've found a roll here, and this roll is similar to the other ones in your file. And what we see is that RC command goes up. And the first thing we want to check is whether there is any RC command on the pitch axis, because obviously if you're giving some input on that axis, then it makes sense that the gyro is moving on that axis. And a lot of times people have, especially with the left stick, if you're mode 2, you'll be working the throttle and you'll be putting in unintentional yaw input, okay? And so you can see here that we do have some yaw input. As you go to drop the throttle to do the roll, you're putting in left yaw. You see that? Now the yaw stick is centered roughly around -5, and as you drop it, you're putting in left yaw. Now that may or may not be intentional, but it's probably unintentional. You're doing right roll here, unless maybe you have camera up tilt compensation. Let's find out. Let's just make sure that's not the case. No, it's at 0. Okay, so you're doing that with your fingers. And let's just confirm that your intuition is correct, that you are in fact getting that unwanted motion. So here is the roll axis, and we can see the roll happening on the gyro. And here is the yaw axis. We can see that we've got a little bit of yaw, which makes sense because you're commanding yaw. And on the roll axis, we can see, or pitch axis rather, we can see that you input a little bit of pitch forward, but that's such a small amount, I wouldn't read too much into it. And we do see that as you enter the move, you get a big bounce of pitch forward and then some pitch backward. And probably what's happening there, if we look at the pitch I term, let's do that. Let's look at the pitch and the gyros. So here, looking at the gyro line, we can see the unwanted movement during the roll. Here you're pitching forward, and here you're pitching strongly backward. And we can also see the pitch P term opposing both of those movements and trying to cancel them out. So that supports the conclusion that you're not commanding this accidentally. I mean, we know that you're not because we looked at RC command. But we see now that the pitch P term is opposing the gyro move, which means the PID controller agrees with you that you didn't command this move, right? If the P term were on the same side of the axis as the gyro, it would be supporting the move and making it happen more, and that's not what we see. So, okay, so then let's take a look next at your motors. And what let's do is here's your motors, and let's also put RC command roll right here so we can see when the roll starts and ends and what happens. So here you're entering the move, and as you go to enter the move, it's odd. We see, yeah, I guess we see the left side. Left side is the blue and the red. They spin down. Yeah, they spin down, and the yellow and the purple spin up, so you're rolling to the right. Here, you reach full deflection. And it's interesting to me that as you drop the throttle, the motors go almost completely to idle. And I've seen this several other times, by the way, so don't think I've just picked this one and maybe the others are different. They all, I mean, I didn't look at all of them, but they all the ones I looked at look like this. This is suggesting to me that air mode is not actually on. You say that air mode's on, and I have no way of verifying that air mode is on, because air mode being a mode would depend on the status of your aux channels, and I can't really know that. But this looks to me like air mode is not turned on, and what's happening is that as you drop the throttle, the motors all spin down. The motors are not all at min throttle, so we don't have, or min command, so we don't have a motor stop situation here. They're idling, and the copter is spinning, but because the motors are down at a very, very low level, I think what's happening is that your air mode is turned off. When you drop the throttle all the way down during the roll, you lose your authority, and then as a result, the copter, wobbles on the pitch axis when it's not commanded. Because notice that as you begin to recenter the stick, you get almost no authority here. These motors spin up ever so slightly, and then at the very second you start to raise the throttle, boom, the motors wake right back up, okay? And then you get this jitter and oscillation because they came on so hard. So the answer to your question of why you're getting these uncommanded motions, when you flip, you're getting roll, and when you roll, you're getting pitch movements, is that when you're lowering the throttle all the way, your motors are going to idle. And that suggests that air mode is not turned on. Yeah. So if air mode really definitely is verifiably on, then I'm pretty confused, because you should have more authority than this at low throttle. What could you do if in fact air mode is on? Perhaps you need perhaps an idle up to prevent this from going all the way down to the bottom. An idle up switch on your transmitter. But it's very odd to me. Like if we look at the throttle, and as we step through here, the throttle is at 1027, or RC command is at 1027, which is your min throttle, presumably. And it's only when you raise the stick. Have you raised the stick? Let's get your RC command on here. Well, I guess I can see it at 1027. 1049, right? It's only when you raise the stick, boom, that they jump up and come back to life. So it really seems like air mode is off. If air mode was on, then the next thing you could do is to use idle up to prevent the throttle from ever going that low. But air mode is supposed to deal with that, and the fact that it's not being dealt with makes me think air mode's off. Okay, that's my conclusion. You think you have air mode turned on, but it's not turned on. That's my conclusion. Get back to me, see if I'm right. And for those of you who've been following along, this is what air mode is for. Now you can watch my video on my channel about what air mode actually does, but the bottom line is that here we are at low throttle, and we have such a low motor set point that the motors are just idling. I am really surprised that the motors jump back to life so aggressively as soon as the throttle is raised just a tiny bit, but I don't know for sure that that's abnormal, so I'm going to let that slide. All right, hope that's helpful, and happy flying.